Hi, this is Davion Johnson. This is my final project for my History 231 or 232 class. I am doing my final project over racial violence. I chose to interview my grandmother, who is back home in Minnesota. I didn't have the fortunes of seeing her over this break, so I chose to FaceTime her. Um, this is my grandmother on FaceTime. Grandma, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Shirley Mukes. Davion's grandmother is Dad's mom, and I live in Minnesota, and I've lived here for over 50 years. Um, Davion is the last son of my son David and his mom Audrey. So he wanted to talk to me this morning on where I lived growing up. Oops, what's that?
That is fine. Um,
Okay.
okay, let's get the interview underway. The first question that I have for you is when and where were you born?
I was born in Coal Mine Town in Western Kentucky in the early 40s. My my dad and uncles and my grandfather were coal miners and farmers in this little town. And it wasn't really a town, it was just my grandfather's family on this piece of land up in Muhlenberg County. And some of them still reside there. Some of the cousins on my line still reside there that are still living. Otherwise, we moved to Paducah before I started the first grade. And that's why I lived and finished high school there in Paducah.
Okay. If you can, what do you remember about your childhood? Or what was your childhood like?
We were there were five of us. We were a two-parent family, and my dad worked, and my mother was a housewife until I was about 11, and then she went to work also, and my grandmother kept us. So,
That okay. Next question. Have you or anybody you knew ever had to experience racial violence? If so, what happened?
not in Kentucky, we didn't experience racial violence, but we experienced racial disparity. Um, because back during that time, everything was segregated. Schools, the communities, the movies. If you went downtown to buy something, you had to either wait until the cashier got finished waiting on a white person, and then they would take another white person rather than wait on you. And so a lot of times you would just put the item down and just walk out of the store without purchasing it.
Okay. This question's more of a compare and contrast. Explain your experience with living down south versus living up north.
Could you rephrase that?
How was living down south different from living up north? Was there any differences, similarities, um, due to like racism? A lot of slaves migrated up north um, to get away from slavery and racism. Can you explain your experience with coming from Kentucky or down south to the north, Minnesota?
Well, first of all, it was passed Emancipation Proclamation, and there was no more slavery, and the conditions were a little different, but not much. There was racism. It was subtle. In the South, you knew, and up here, it was kind of hidden, and so you didn't really realize somebody was being racially discriminating against you until you experienced it. It could be on a job, or it could be shopping downtown. The only difference is up here it had always been integrated so far as shopping was concerned, I think. But in the South, we were just getting to that point. And in the South also, you couldn't go in the front door of a place, restaurants. You had to go in the back door. And as a result, I did not frequent any place that I couldn't go in the front door. I felt that my money was good enough to go in the back door, was good enough to go in the front door to spend. On the jobs, my first job, I had a hard time getting it because I hadn't been up here long, and they said they wanted experience, but we didn't have the opportunity to work the kind of jobs in the South because they weren't open to us that were open up here. And so I had to go to an organization that was in existence back during the time that I came up here to get them to try to help me get that job. It was, and once I got it, I felt okay, but you always had to be on the defensive because you didn't know if they were going to keep you there because of you're not learning or not doing what they wanted all the time. So.
Okay. The next question will be, do you believe or do you think racism still exists today? If so, in what ways do you think it exists?
Oh yeah, that's something that will never go away because people like to feel superior to another person because of the color of their skin. And this is not the way that God intended for this world to be. There is nobody that's superior to anybody because we're all made of flesh and blood. And if other people would look at their history, they would see that there is no way they could have come from existing as they do. They had to come from the black man. And this is a fear that a lot of people, they have this fear and just want to be considered superior. So.
Okay. Well, one way that I feel racism still kind of exists, of course, it's made national headlines throughout the last couple years was through the police department. What is your thoughts on the police brutality that is occurring, seeing how it just actually hit home just this year with the Philando Castile murder. What is your thoughts on how police is treating young black men?
I saw this coming back in the 80s when they took the black police officers out of the black neighborhood and started, because they weren't getting the arrest. They thought the numbers weren't there for people going to jail and going to prison when the black police officers were in the neighborhood. And so in order to turn that around, they had to take them out and put them with a white police officer in another area, and put the white police officers that were they were racist, and to try to find something on the black kids that really wasn't there. It was as if they couldn't walk down the street without being questioned about where their goings and comings. And so things have really changed a lot, and I think that the police officers that are killing the young black men, it's something that they've grown up with, thinking that we were not human. But it's not that way. It's only when the shoe's on the other foot that somebody kills one of them that they feel compassion. And the only way to stop that is to send them to jail, give them mete out the same treatment that they get for, the black men would get execution or life in prison for killing one of them. And yet some of these police officers get off and they get their pensions and they get to live scot-free, so they think.
Okay. The last question I have for you in this interview is, what advice would you give young people today?
Let's tell them that in order to avoid some of the things that, like the police shootings, and also different situations in the city's period, is to line your life up in a righteous manner. And that's, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything will be added unto you. And that I feel is the only way for us to turn this whole situation around. Because you don't see children that are brought up in the church and following the ways of Christianity, going to prison for stuff. Now it's different when they go out and, they go to parties and stuff and somehow get killed in a gang retaliation. That is something that nobody can avoid.
All right. Well, that concludes my interview with you, Grandma. Thank you for taking the time out this morning and sitting down talking to me. I will call you back later and let you know how this goes.